Welcome to another episode of One Bills Lite, the Usain Bolt version of our daily show, One Bills Live, where we get you in and out in about 30 to 40 minutes. The numbers game will assess the best NFL playoff clubs with the best scoring defense. QB Summit consultant Jordan Palmer tells us what changed the most for Josh Allen in year 3, and we ponder our one burning question: will Brian Daboll be an NFL head coach in 2021? Let's pot it up!
And it's Steve Tasker who has been all over the field.
Kind of unique. He was kind of a dual-role player for you. Steve!
A balloon.
Steve! A blimp? We're not even in the stratosphere of normalcy here. Chris Brown, Steve Tasker here. Welcome to One Bills Lite Playoff Edition as the Bills host the Indianapolis Colts in the AFC wildcard matchup between the 2 and 7 seeds. Steve, what speaks to you most about this matchup?
Interesting matchup for the Bills. They come in on a roll, very high-flying offense, scoring 40 points plus a game, almost 40 points a game, beating their last 5 or 6 opponents by double digits, and actually, ironically, helping the Colts make it by beating Miami in Week 17. So the Colts coming in here with a really good running game, a very athletic playmaking defense, and a Hall of Fame quarterback. An 11-win team as the 7 seed. The AFC was really stacked this year with a lot of good football teams.
Yeah, I think you'd be hard-pressed going back, finding an 11-win team, even in the old playoff format, as a number 6 seed. They're probably few and far between. I'm sure there are examples, but you can probably count them on one hand.
This is a 7-seed team.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
And that's my
point.
Unbelievable. There's a 10-win team sitting home in the Miami Dolphins.
The Dolphins are the 8th seed in the conference with 10 wins. It's pretty unusual. The AFC was really, really on a roll this season.
I mean, it basically means half of your conference had 10 wins or more. It's crazy. I kind of see this game as an interesting one, too. The Vegas odds makers have the Bills as a 6.5-point favorite. The over-under is 51.5. So they are expecting a relatively, I don't know if you'd call that a high-scoring game, but with the way this league has gone this season, the highest scoring point total for the league as a whole in league history. But with a 52-point total, I'm kind of hoping for a Bills victory somewhere in the neighborhood of 31-20, which I think is very reasonable. The other interesting thing, Steve, players of the month. So Josh Allen wins AFC Offensive Player of the Month for the month of December. Mm-hmm. DeForest Buckner, Defensive Player of the Month for the AFC for December. And Jonathan Taylor, AFC Rookie of the Month for the month of December. So some high-flying individual players coming into this matchup as well. Now, as we begin the playoffs, Steve, we start with defense. We frequently hear the mantra that defense wins championships. That may not seem to hold much water these days in the NFL, coming off this historic scoring season. And in fact, it has not held up all that often for the last 20 years in the NFL. Since 2002, only 7 teams that led the league in scoring defense have gone on to appear in the Super Bowl. So, league-leading scoring defense, best defense in terms of points allowed, they've only gotten to the Super Bowl 7 times in the last 18 years. So, the numbers game challenge for you, Steve Tasker. Can you name the 7 number 1 scoring defenses since 2002 that made it to the Super Bowl? This is not easy. We're going over 18 years of history here. So I guess put your thinking cap on and say to yourself, what are the really good defenses over the last 18 years that got to the big game?
First up, the Ravens.
Well, the Ravens were in 2000. We're starting in 2002.
Didn't they win the Super Bowl with?
They did win the Super Bowl, and they were the number 1 defense. The league currently.
Wait. What about 2011 or when they beat Kaepernick and the Niners?
The 2012 Super Bowl. No, they were not the number 1 scoring defense in the league. So that's a good guess, though.
Seattle Seahawks.
Seattle Seahawks in 2013 and 2014. You know they got to back-to-back Super Bowls. Only won one of them.
But they got to 2 of them.
Yeah.
So that's. All right, so that's the one. All right, let's see. How about...
Because remember, they didn't give Marshawn Lynch the ball at the goal line and cost
Denver
himself.
Broncos?
The Denver Broncos not on the list as the number 1 scoring defense. I believe they were the number 1 total defense the year that they made it.
See, that's killing me. The scoring defense.
Right, and it's because it's one you don't often think of. You hear teams say, "Oh, they were the number 1 defense in the league." That's usually based on total defense, yards allowed.
Right.
So this is what makes this one a little trickier.
This is going to be squashed. We're going to
but
be
I
on
think
this
if
for
you,
a while.
I think if you think of historic defenses over the last 18 years, you'll probably find you've got 2 of the 7 already because Seattle gave you 2.
Right.
There's I'll give you a hint. There's another defense. There's another team, I should say, that was number 1 in scoring defense that made it twice.
New York Giants.
Not the New York Giants, no.
New England Patriots.
Yes, New England twice. Once in 2003 when they beat Carolina, then again in 2016 with the famous comeback on Atlanta.
Right.
So you've got 4 out of 7 now.
All right. I will say Steelers.
Steelers are the other 2. 2008 when they beat Arizona, and 2010 when they lost to Green Bay. You've got 1 left, Steve. I believe in you. You can do this. Number 1 scoring defense, a team that was probably carried to the Super Bowl by their defense. And I'll give you another hint. They won the Super Bowl as well that year.
Tampa Bay.
Tampa Bay 2002 defeated Oakland. Well done, Steve.
I love myself.
Now, the question is, because there is a team in this year's playoffs that's number 1 in scoring defense. As we know, the Bills dethroned Miami from having that title with the 56-point outburst in Week 17. This team vaulted into the number 1 spot right at the end of the season, and they are in this year's playoff field.
I will say that all right, I'm going to take my first without even looking at the stands so I can remind myself of
who's in the playoff.
Who's in the playoff. Both conferences. I will say Rams.
It is the LA Rams. So they are number 1 in scoring defense. I believe they're number 1 in total defense too. And so the opportunity is there for them to become the 8th playoff
that I got
team
any of those right.
That was number 1 in scoring defense to try to get all the way to the Super Bowl. I don't know that they're going to get there with the way Jared Goff is playing right now, but that's neither here nor there. They have a tough road matchup at Seattle in the wild card round this weekend. Nice job there, Steve.
That was, by far my most surprising performance.
If you want to characterize it that way, that's fine. Second part of the numbers game, Steve, involves the winningest playoff quarterbacks in NFL history. Guys with the most playoff wins. Now, since the guy at the top of the list is a layup, I'll give him to you. It's Tom Brady, the winningest quarterback in playoff history.
The Tampa Bay quarterback.
30 wins in his career. That's impressive. So, Steve, can you name the next 5 quarterbacks on the all-time playoff win list?
Montana.
Montana is correct. 16 wins. He is second, right behind Brady.
Aikman.
Aikman is not on this list. I was surprised myself.
Bradshaw.
Terry Bradshaw is next with 14 victories.
14 victories?
Yeah, Terry Bradshaw, 14 playoff victories. He is third. I should say he's tied for third with 2 other players.
14?
Yeah.
Jim Kelly.
Not Jim Kelly, no.
Steve Young.
It is not Steve Young.
Really?
No. Think about guys with long careers, lots of playoffs.
Roethlisberger.
Roethlisberger is on the list. He's behind this group with 13. And obviously could add to that total this year.
Wow.
So these are all Hall of Famers.
Are they modern? I mean, like semi-modern. You know, they're not. They're talking for the fit, like Otto Graham.
No.
Okay.
You know all these people.
All right.
I think you might.
Breeze.
I think you might. No, it's not Drew Brees. You're gonna kick yourself. You're not. Come on, You're smarter than this. I know you are.
I don't know. Thank you for your faith.
Yes.
In my ignorance.
You are smarter than this. Think about people that have appeared in a lot of Super Bowls as a quarterback. I'll give you a hint. All of these quarterbacks have won Super Bowls.
Russ Wilson.
Not Russell Wilson.
Oh, Peyton Manning.
Peyton Manning is one, yes. 14.
And then I will say
Now you're on the right track.
Eli.
It's not Eli Manning, no. The thing that people forget about Eli Manning is he had 2 historic Super Bowl playoff runs. I think he only went to the playoffs once or twice more in his entire career. And they had early exits, so.
Oh, Aaron Rodgers.
Not Aaron Rodgers, no.
Favors.
Brett Favre is on the list. He has 13. He and Roethlisberger tied. So you have one left.
And where does he stand on the list?
This guy is tied with Terry Bradshaw for 3rd and Peyton Manning with 14 playoff victories.
Did I say Steve Young?
You did, and you were incorrect.
All right.
Wow, quick on the buzzer, those guys. Come on, you know this guy. He played in a lot of Super Bowls, Steve, and his name is not Jim Kelly.
It's not Aikman. Steve Young. Joe Montana, I said. Bradshaw. It's not.
I'm stunned this name has escaped you.
Played in a bunch of Super Bowls, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I said Bradshaw.
You did say Bradshaw. This guy played in more Super Bowls than Bradshaw.
What? Oh, Elway.
John Elway, yes. He
Fool.
is 14. I told you you'd be mad at yourself. All right, good job. So Ben Roethlisberger is the guy that can climb this list if the Steelers can win a couple of playoff games. If he wins 2 playoff games, Steve, he could move into 3rd all-time behind Brady and Montana only for most playoff wins.
That's big.
That is big. I think it's a big deal.
That's big.
And he's won 2 Super Bowls, but I think that would be a huge jump for him.
He's a Hall of Famer.
I mean, yeah, he's going to the Hall of Fame anyway, but that would be impressive. I didn't realize he had accumulated that many.
Yeah, with the Steelers team, they go in. They're in it every year. They're in the play, or seems like, or on a regular basis.
Yeah.
You play that long. Yeah, no question.
All right, good job on numbers game this week, Steve. You're getting better and better at this, I do have to say. Time now, though, for our sit-down with QB Summit consultant Jordan Palmer, an NFL quarterback for 7 years. He's worked with Josh Allen in each of his first 3 NFL off seasons. He has some great insight on what has led to Josh Allen's MVP-worthy season.
The Bills have been scoring a lot of points on these teams. Let's just jump right into it, Jordan. First of all, thanks for being on. The Bills have been on an unbelievable pace in the red zone. And Josh doesn't turn it over down there. You went through it. Like, why? Give us from an offensive coach's standpoint, why, or a defensive coach's standpoint, why the Bills are such a handful in the red zone down close.
Well, one of the things is let's all say that we're all defensive coordinators here, okay? And we got to play the Bills, which would be the last team I'd want to play right now. When you get in the red zone, obviously getting the quarterback sacked, getting him hit, getting the quarterback on the ground, that's where turnovers can happen. That's where bad decisions can happen. That's where inaccuracy can happen. So getting around the quarterback as a defense is huge in the red zone when they're just particularly on 3rd down. But you can't rush the passer. If the quarterback is a threat to run, which obviously Josh is, and even when he struggled a little bit his rookie year, he was still running touchdowns, right? So when you have a quarterback, you have to respect his ability to run. You can't rush the passer the exact same way. And then when you have a guy like Brian Daboll, he's not just forcing it to Stephon Diggs when they get in the red zone. He's not just lining up and running it down their throat. They throw it to all the tight ends. They throw it to all the receivers. They throw it to all the running backs. They throw it to the quarterback. When you have to defend every single skill, and I believe Josh has thrown it to a tight end or two, or to a tackle or two as well.
Yep.
Tackle eligible. So when you literally have to defend every eligible receiver at all times and try and sack the quarterback while not giving up your pass rush lane, so because the quarterback's going to jog it in or jump over somebody or stiff arm somebody.
And the run game.
I just don't really know what you do to defend it because Josh also doesn't turn it over. And so in the red zone, I think he has 0. So as a defensive coordinator's perspective, I'm just not really sure what your game plan is going into playing the Bills once they cross the 20.
Whatever the plan is, it's not foolproof, that's for sure, against this group. I was fascinated, Jordan, by a conversation that I heard Josh have on the Pat McAfee show, the former punter, where he talked to him about how he had his throwing motion digitally mapped. So my question is, were you the guys that did that with him? And if so, maybe just kind of relay that story to us, because I think the biggest thing that he took out of that was he he was using basically zero hip drive in his initial throwing mechanics.
Yeah, so that was my group, and I was able to partner with somebody who has an amazing technology that really football's behind. In baseball, they use a lot of this, a lot of biomechanics and measuring things like your kinematic sequence, your hip firing, your shoulder, and then your lever, which in a thrower is your arms. In golf, this is old technology in golf. The best the golfers on tour, male and female, they hit in simulators. I mean, I got rich friends that have golf simulators. I mean, that's normal for golf. For quarterbacks, it's not really normal. And so I was able to really partner with guys who do have golf and baseball backgrounds, and we're able to map things out. Now, Josh found out some things, and it was helpful. And I keep hearing my name talked about all the time, and I've done media, and I'm happy to do it. I'm getting way too much credit for Josh's year. This has to do with Josh solving things himself, Josh making the plays, and then Brian Daboll and Ken Dorsey building a plan around him that works. The conversations he has with Matt Barkley, during the week and on the sideline. Like, Josh is in a very, very good spot where he's got a lot of really smart people, and then he's actually doing it himself. So I will say this. Yes, we did a ton of work this offseason, and we were able to kind of solve for some things. But my name's getting thrown in there way too often because this was all Josh's work and the Buffalo Bills staff. But with that being said, the really exciting thing is some of the things that we found out really won't be addressed until this coming off season. So you think about this growth, this gain. I'm not creating expectations here. Josh has handled that himself. But there's a ways to go. And I think we're not even close to the ceiling. And Josh has always been incredibly talented. He's always had an amazing skill set. He doesn't just have a rocket arm. He's always had touch too. Accuracy and these things have certainly been getting better. But I think the biggest thing is the credit goes to Josh, because Josh is just seeing things so clearly. He's not. I had a conversation with a mutual friend of Josh and I's, who's another player in the league. And one of the things that he says he's watching Josh is, he goes, it's not that Josh isn't throwing picks. It's that none of the balls are even in jeopardy of being picked. It's not like he hasn't thrown very many picks because everyone's dropping them, which happens sometimes. The ball's just not put in harm's way. So there's been some mechanical things that Josh did, and he put a lot of work in, and the staff's done an amazing job. And I, busted my tail to help him out as much as I could. But it's really a combination of a lot of things, and Josh is really the reason for it. He's the one doing the work. He's the one executing. He's the one working tirelessly when no one knows he's even doing it, and he's reaping the benefits, and Bills Mafia is as well.
Yeah. I wanted to follow that up with the ceiling question. I mean, you opened the door, so I'm going to walk through it here. You said he still has stuff that you guys discovered that he's going to work on this coming off season. So with that in mind, and the humongous jumps that he's made, like we had Brian Billick on about a month or two ago, and I asked him if he had ever seen a quarterback make a jump in completion percentage like this. And he said, 40 years in football, I've never seen a jump to this degree. It's almost unprecedented. So all of the improvements aside, you still think there's some ground to gain here in Josh's game, and the ceiling still has some room for him to grow to?
I don't think there's a ceiling. I think Josh is physically the most gifted athlete we've had play this position in the NFL. And I understand that's a strong statement. And I'm not saying it because I work with him or because I'm a fan of his. That's not why I say it. I think it's pretty factual. He's 6'5" and change. He's 240 and change. He's as fast as any of these guys minus Lamar and Russell. He's probably faster than everybody else at the quarterback position. His arm is what it is. It's strongest in the league or second strongest in the league, whatever, that doesn't matter. And he also is a runner. He has vision. He can cut back. He's hurdled. He's not just a fast guy that runs out of bounds. So when you put all those things together from a talent perspective, that really makes that ceiling really high. But then you look at, from a mechanical standpoint, there's some opportunities to get more consistent. As amazing as the year has, he's certainly missed throws. So has Aaron. So does every MVP ever. They miss throws too. So there's an opportunity there. The biggest area I see for growth isn't actually due to Josh. It's just due to the timing with his players, with his teammates. So let's look at this offseason with Stephon Diggs, and they're on this historic run right now. But the reality is this offseason, I know it's been talked about that the guys all went to Miami for 3 days. Think about it. No OTAs. He got 3 days in Miami before training camp. That's it.
No preseason either.
They didn't have any time this offseason to work on specific things, to work on specific routes. One of the things when you get a new receiver, and I've been on teams where we got a new free agent receiver, a new draft pick, and you want to throw some balls to him low. You want to throw them to him high. I want to throw it outside. I'm going to force it in there between the defenders and see if he goes and gets it. You got to try things out to see what a guy can do, and for him to get used to the way that you throw it. And for him and Steph to be doing what they're doing, and really the only time they've had chances to work on that is in practice during the season and in games. You're not going to risk throws in games that you will in OTAs. So next year, if there's OTAs, Josh will be able to try all kinds of stuff with Steph to see if they can do it, because there's no consequence. He can throw a pick in practice and nobody cares. So they haven't even had a chance to really develop the chemistry outside of on Sundays, which is the hardest place to develop chemistry. So the chemistry these guys have, I don't think right now it's anywhere near where it's going to be. And that's the same case for all of the receivers and tight ends that he's throwing it to. That's the same case for both those young running backs who haven't got a full offseason of really working with him yet. So all that stuff that's new for new players or for no offseason, just from a continuity standpoint, there's a room to grow for this offense. And that is really scary for the AFC East and whoever's in their way during this playoff run.
I'm going to ask you about this playoff run. They've got the Indianapolis Colts coming in. They're a solid team, no question about it. They deserve to be in the playoffs. This is but it's the 2 seed coming in on a steamroll against a team that just kind of got in because of a win by that other team. They won their game, the Indianapolis Colts, and the Bills beat the other team that was in contention for the 7th seed. So the Colts get in. How do you see this bracket working out, particularly since you've got Tennessee and Baltimore playing against each other on the opening week, those two teams that are kind of those power run teams? And just give me a quick synopsis of the playoffs and how they're going to play out.
Well, another way to look at it is they've added a 7th team. Now, obviously, we all know that this is a bummer year to be the number 2 seed because you don't get that bye. But they're essentially playing against a team that on any other year would not have made the playoffs. There's normally 6 spots. Right. They're playing the 7th seed. So one way to look at it is they're playing a team that would not have made the playoffs. But it doesn't matter rankings going into it. Any given Sunday, you got to play well. Any given Saturday this weekend. So what they're going to need to do is continue to do what they've been doing. They do not need to change everything. It's not playoffs. Now we're going to run everything different. Now we're going to try and play harder. They need to continue to laugh and have fun in warm-ups. They need to be jacking around with each other. They need to be dancing in the end zone. And they need to be continuing to execute at the level that they're executing right now, and even ratchet that up a notch because of the playoffs. But they don't need to change anything. If they do, if they're able to do that, this is a really favorable matchup for Buffalo. I'll be honest with you. I don't know what on the AFC side until you get to Kansas City. I don't know what isn't a favorable matchup. I know that they lost versus Tennessee the first time and all that, but the way that Buffalo's playing right now, if they can just continue to execute and continue to make the plays that are there, quarterback continues to play within himself, and the staff continues to dial it up the way that they have on offense and defense and special teams, I'd say. They've got a fake punt that worked. I mean, it's like all 3 phases are just clicking. So they don't need to pull anything out of the hat. In my opinion, it's just continuing to execute and make teams play catch up.
Talking to quarterback consultant and founder of QB Summit, Jordan Palmer. Back to Josh, and as much as we've seen all these improvements, Jordan, the one thing that kind of sticks out to me is just his on-field demeanor, no matter the circumstance in the game. There seems to be this inner calm that has kind of that he's successfully paired with his command of the offense. People would often in years past point to that Harry high school play, or hero ball is the term we hear sometimes, when Josh, maybe he sees Deshaun Watson in that playoff game making plays left and right to get his team to climb back into a game where they're down 16-0. And you couldn't help but think Josh is sitting on the bench saying, well, now I got to go do something amazing. And then we would see like one of those plays, like a lateral throw to his tight end, as he's trying to make a play running with the football. Those are gone from his game now. And there seems to be this inner calm that he's paired with his command of the offense. No matter the circumstance, no matter the time and score, he seems to be in complete control of what he wants to execute. Where does that come from? How do you suddenly have that after maybe not having it no matter the situation in years past?
Well, the easiest way to look at that, and I think you're spot on, is he had a habit starting in college where when he was rolling to his right, he was trying to make a play. And he had a play, I think it was versus Boise State, where he rolled to his right. It was like a sophomore year. It was like a second year playing at Wyoming, and he rolled to his right, and he threw this ball in the back corner of the end zone He was running out of bounds. He threw it like 46 yards. Perfect throw. I mean, unbelievable throw. And that was kind of like the start of the Josh Allen hype. Well, and then he did that his rookie year. He did that last year a lot. I think he did that the first week or two of the season. When he was rolling to his right and trying to make a play, he would sometimes make an unbelievable throw, sometimes throw a dumb pick, and a lot of times take an unnecessary hit. Hit his head on the ground, land on his throwing shoulder. It was dangerous. It was compromising. And the risk and the reward was not a mature decision. So that's been basically eliminated. He hasn't done that since I think week 1 or 2 this season. Like not even once. Throws it away when it needs to be thrown away, chucks it out of bounds, makes plays when they're there. And then he's had some, throw it across his body to an open receiver and the ball was not in jeopardy. And I think that the theme is, and it's all him, but the theme for at least my conversations has really been around control, physically, mentally, and emotionally. So from a physical standpoint, controlling the football. Controlling the ball is the root of accuracy. Now, from a media perspective, and a lot of coaches and scouts, they just say somebody's either accurate or they're not. But it really comes down to their control of the football. And that is what I think Josh has developed over these last 3 years, is more control of the football. He doesn't really lose the ball ever. Doesn't sail it over the guy's head, doesn't throw a duck. He's just in control of the ball. Controlling his mind is just taking it one play at a time, one series at a time. Doesn't matter what happened last time, new series, reload. And that's an easy thing to talk about. It's a very difficult thing to do in the moment. And then the third one is the biggest jump, is that's in controlling your emotions. Josh is, in my opinion, an elite, not even just in football. I've been around a lot of professional athletes in a lot of different sports. Josh is an elite competitor. He has zero interest in second place whatsoever, and he never has. Part of it's the way he was raised. Part of it's having a brother that's a year younger than you. It's a combination of all the things. But he is so competitive that early in his career, that competitiveness, look at the way that Texans game ended last year, that trying to make a play competitiveness, a lot of times led to bad plays. And so being in control of his emotions and knowing that, man, I really want to try and make these 5 guys miss and throw it 80 yards down the field, but nope, I'm going to throw it out of bounds, second down. And he's just playing the game. He's playing football. We call game managers guys that don't have strong arms and throw checkdowns. I think Aaron Rodgers is a great game manager. I think Tom Brady's a great game manager. I think Russell Wilson's a fantastic game manager. I think Patrick Mahomes is a great game manager. And Josh has turned into an elite game manager. It's not just the touchdowns he throws and the games he wins. It's the picks he doesn't throw and the games he doesn't lose for his team.
I got to ask you one question. We're sitting here in the AFC East, and certainly Josh has knocked it out of the park. And this is my last question. I'm going to let you go. One of your other guys and a good friend of Josh Allen's is Sam Darnold. And the Jets, once again, fired a head coach. Sam is going to get another offensive coordinator. What are your thoughts about Sam Darnold's future? And, when does he get a little stability that Josh has enjoyed? When is he going to get an offensive coordinator that understands his skill set? And what do you think his ceiling is or his future is in the near future?
Well, I think Sam has a similar ceiling. It's really, really high. This is an elite athlete in terms of his ability to move and create space. He can make all the throws. He's had zero development and continuity thus far. Even in college, he only played 15 games and kind of got thrown in there. And they don't develop quarterbacks the way that some other schools do. And then from the NFL's perspective, this would be his third OC. Zero continuity, zero stability there. And then the roster is it's certainly not the Bills offensive roster. He's had 2 GMs. And so if he's in New York this year and he gets a new system and all that stuff, I just hope that it's somebody who is going to be able to continue to develop him the way that Brian Daboll and Ken Dorsey have developed Josh Allen. They don't get it. Whatever credit in the world is not enough. They have done a fantastic job with Josh. And if Sam, the way that Justin Fields and these other guys are playing, who knows what the Jets are going to do? I don't. And so until they get those pieces in place, we won't know what they're going to do with Sam. And if Sam gets an opportunity to go somewhere else, again, I think it's somewhere where he gets a chance to develop and learn. Sam does not need to sit for a year or two and figure it out. He just needs one consistent thing and know who's running what route and when they're going to be there. And Sam, what I'll say about Sam is there will be a time in Sam's future where all he has to do is play to his ability, and that'll be enough for them to win most of the games and be in it at the end. And when Sam gets to that point, he is a guy who is capable of winning a Super Bowl.
Thanks very much, Jordan.
Thanks,
We're out
Jordan.
of time. We appreciate you joining us, and enjoy the playoffs.
Awesome. I will. Go Bills.
All right. Okay, we wrap up this episode with our one burning question. Bills fans are worried about Sean McDermott's coaching staff, Steve, being poached by other less successful clubs. So our burning question is, will Brian Daboll be a head coach in the NFL in 2021?
I would say yeah, and there's two really quality opportunities for a guy exactly like Brian Daboll. One is, of course, in San Diego, in L.A., for the Chargers. They've got a brand new quarterback, Justin Herbert, who had a wonderful, maybe he's probably Offensive Rookie of the Year in the National Football League. And to have a guy come in and have the success he had with Josh Allen, and Justin Herbert obviously doesn't have as far to go as Josh did.
He's ahead of the
curve.
As
a quarterback. He's way ahead of the curve. To bring a guy in like Brian Daboll, who has watched Sean McDermott over the last 3 years build the program into something special, I think that sets him up for having recent experience of how to do it in this climate that the league is in now. Another opportunity, a tremendous opportunity for a team to get on track in the same way with a guy like Brian Daboll would be Jacksonville Jaguars. They got the number 1 pick in the draft. Trevor Lawrence has declared for the 2021 draft. You've got a chance to pick him. He is a quarterback who can sling it and has a lot of things going for him. Is a much better prospect even than Josh Allen was. Much more polished prospect than Josh Allen was, and that you would have that same sort of fit for Brian Daboll. There are other opportunities, as we know, Detroit, Atlanta, Houston, the New York Jets. While they're all attractive in their own way and have their own ups and pluses and minuses, none of them fit as Brian Daboll as well as the two in L.A. and in Jacksonville.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. Jacksonville has 11 draft choices this year. I think the only fly in the ointment with the Jacksonville job is what Shad Khan said this past week when he said he wants input on personnel decisions. And that is something that can very quickly scare off a general manager chiefly and potentially a coach as well.
Remind me, does Jacksonville need a GM as well?
They do.
They let Dave Caldwell go.
He got let go in late November, right after Thanksgiving.
And here's something that Dave Caldwell was also a Buffalo guy, St. Francis guy, just like Brian Daboll is. They kind of have the same thing as well as the general manager in L.A. for Tom Telesco for the Chargers. They went to the same high school here in Buffalo at the same time.
Together.
Not in the same class, but still.
1 or 2 years apart.
It's a heck of a connection.
Yes, and, we know how the NFL circles work. You go with who you know, and there's an inherent level of trust there. And I think that's a very rare thing. And if you can get that while getting the dream job that you've always wanted, it's kind of a no-brainer. And when you throw in the added benefit of, oh, and by the way, here's our rookie quarterback who just threw 31 touchdown passes.
Right.
I mean, think about that. Everybody's all gaga about Josh Allen breaking the passing touchdown record for the Bills franchise here in his 3rd season. And it was a fantastic year, make no mistake about it. This guy in his first year threw 31 touchdown passes.
Right.
And the Chargers, really, all they need to do is kind of strengthen their offensive line a little bit, get a little more help in the defensive backfield, and then just try to stay healthy.
Yeah.
They've got a team that can go places as early as next year. You can hit the ground running with that team. So it could depend, too, also on what you want. Do you want a strict rebuild, build it in your own image? If you want that, that's probably Jacksonville. If you want to hit the ground running and be successful right away, I think the Chargers are best positioned to do that for you as a new head coach.
The Chargers are more fully formed as a roster with talent. Now, here's the thing, and we saw that happen here in Buffalo. There were some really good players on this team when Sean McDermott arrived. They did not fit the type of team he wanted to have, and he jettisoned those guys. So you've got to be, if you walk into L.A., there may be a handful of very talented players that you don't want any part of as a head coach, even though they can play, even though they might have caught a bunch of passes or made a bunch of tackles or got a bunch of sacks, whatever the case may be, they may not be the type of personality you want your team to emulate. Mm-hmm. And that's some hard decisions you have to make in L.A. on a team that you see that everybody would say, hey, this team's ready to go right now. You may be saying, we may be ready to go, but we're not going to go in that direction.
There is elite talent on that roster, though. I mean, Derwin James will be coming back from a season-ending injury this past year. He is an elite safety. Joey Bosa is locked up long-term. He is an elite pass rusher. You have Herbert at quarterback, and you've got Keenan Allen at receiver, and you have an above-average tight end in Hunter Henry. Mm-hmm. All of these guys, at least to my knowledge, are under contract. So that team is poised to go places with the right new head coach. So it's going to be really interesting. But I'm afraid I agree with you, Steve.
But here's the thing, too.
I think Brian Daboll is out the door. I think he gets a head coaching job somewhere.
Yeah, and in Jacksonville, they can start from the ground up and start quickly. They don't have to get their cap in order or anything. They can start
money to spend.
They can get the guys they want right away, and they will be significantly better in 12 months.
Right. Roster flexibility is what you're pitching if you're the Jacksonville organization.
Right.
And basically starting from the ground up, which what that affords a new head coach is time on the job. Your first year is essentially going to be a honeymoon year because the expectations are so low.
And I think, too, even the things that you said about the owner wanting some input on personnel, I think if you go in and have some conversations, some frank conversations with the ownership before you're hired by them and say, listen, here's what I expect, and hear his input on what he thinks about his personnel. If he says all the right things, that may be the best thing because you can, as a head coach, you can go directly to the owner and say, hey, here's what we agreed to. Here's what we said. Here's what we're doing. What do you think? And the owner's like, yeah, I'm all about it. What else can I do? Or the owner says, wait a minute, you're right. The GM or whoever it is not going in the same direction. Let's get back on track here. So if the owner gives you the right information and you're questioning of him during the process, then it may be the place to go because you can see things the same way, or at least sell him on your point of view.
Yeah, I mean, the general consensus on Shad Khan as an owner in Jacksonville is he's a reasonable man, but that story that came out earlier this week, I don't know if it portrayed him accurately because it made it sound like he was going to be heavy-handed in his decision-making going forward, and that can scare off potential GMs and coaches. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out and how he presents himself in those interviews with potential head coaching candidates.
That's a part of the equation we don't know enough about, and
You're right.
only the new head coach and new GM will really know how he feels about his personnel and why he said the statement that he did, because Jerry Jones in Dallas is that way, and don't kid yourself, every owner in the league has a voice in that room, and his voice is usually the final voice. So him saying that is not earth-shattering to most head coaching candidates, and I'm sure that because he made himself to the media, they put him on the spot and asked him to clarify that, and then his clarification probably came across in print a little heavier or not as heavy as we thought, but that's not groundbreaking information for most head coaching candidates.
And we should also mention that the Jets did request formal permission to speak to Brian Daboll about their head coaching post. Obviously, they have a quarterback there along with a high draft choice, as we know, and there's a lot to do there, though. That is a heavy lift, but Brian Daboll does have prior time spent in New York. He was the quarterback's coach there for 2 years under Eric Mangini, coached Brett Favre at his last stop as a professional, and Brett Favre highly recommends him. And the other potential job where he could be considered is in Houston, where Nick Caserio, the former front office man in New England, was just hired as GM. There's a history there from Brian Daboll's time there. He could surface as a candidate in Houston as well.
I'll tell you this, though. One of the most attractive spots may be the Atlanta Falcons, and I'll tell you why. You're in a division that is down in Carolina. Tampa Bay's got a 43-year-old quarterback, and New Orleans has got a 40-year-old quarterback. You are poised, and your quarterback, and with your draft picks and that, you may be able to start your rebuild and catch it at a time when the other three franchises are all doing well or struggling to do well. Jacksonville, you're in a division with two playoff teams this year, Indianapolis and Tennessee. In the New York Jets, you're in with Bill Belichick, a surging Buffalo Bills team, and a Miami team that is on the rise and won 10 games this year.
And even the Chargers, you're
with the Chiefs and the Broncos and the Raiders. So you think about it, the kind of plum spot for some success within your division, Atlanta may be the one you go to.
Yeah, interesting. Follow-up here. Do you believe Leslie Frazier will be a head coach in 2021? The Bills as an organization have tried to push his candidacy forward. Coach McDermott made him an assistant head coach last year in the offseason in an effort to get him some more looks, and it didn't really come to pass. The defense hasn't had the statistical number type season that they had the previous 2 years. I don't know if he's going to get an opportunity because of that very fact.
Yeah, it's a very current kind of climate when you do it. For instance, 2 or 3 years ago when Matt LaFleur got hired, Cliff Kingsbury got hired, Sean McVay got hired, it was all these very young offensive coaches who call their own plays. So you don't run the risk of a Brian Daboll situation where you're going to lose a big part of your staff and your play calling, your offensive success. The Bills hired a defensive head coach. It's gone very well for them. The Miami Dolphins are very happy with Brian Flores as a defensive coach. The Broncos hired Vic Fangio.
Yeah.
There's been that direction you can go, and teams have been pretty successful. But you're right. I think it's a what have you done for me lately kind of league. And if the Bills defense took a step backward, owners are going to say, why is that? And why didn't you get more out of those guys?
And the shame of it is they're playing some of their best football right now, and the numbers will not bear that out because of the slow start that the defense did have, not to mention the fact that the theme of this offseason, I believe, Steve, is going to be head coaches that have a proven track record of developing young quarterbacks are going to ultimately be far and away the hires. Robert Saleh is probably going to get a head coaching job. Matt Eberflus is probably going to get a head coaching job somewhere. Those are defensive guys with defensive backgrounds, but I think the guys that have developed quarterbacks are going to be the hot commodities, and Brian Daboll, as we know, is one of them.
You're running out of slots.
Well, correct.
You've got
there's 6 positions.
There's 6 spots open, and you can go down the hot list. It's Brian Daboll, it's Eric Bieniemy, Robert Saleh,
Matt Eberflus.
Yeah. Arthur Smith from Tennessee's play caller. That's kind of your.
That's the fun running group.
Yeah, and then you can go down the list of outliers from like the former Buckeyes coach. And I can't remember his name right now. Urban Meyer. Guys like that coming in out of the blue. Jim Harbaugh. Guys like that. But you get down the list of 6 guys, there's a lot of qualified candidates out there. And, that remains to be seen as to what. And Marvin Lewis has interviewed.
Yes.
As well. Guys with former experience. So, yeah, there's a lot of names that are in the hat. There's only 6 spots open.
Yeah. It will certainly be a hot stove head coaching offseason. That is all the time we have for this episode of One Bills Lite. Please subscribe to this weekly podcast, no matter what platform you're on. And if you're listening and watching on our YouTube channel, please subscribe and hit that like button. And remember, when there isn't enough time for One Bills Live, there's always enough time for One Bills Lite. For Steve Tasker, I'm Chris Brown. We'll catch you next week, everybody.